Hi everyone, it's Lynn Dion from Pink Whisper Designs. Today we're going to create this cute little hexagon shaped card, but we're also going to be using some new stamps and dies from Art Impressions. And this set is from the series called the Armful series. And these stamps come with the coordinating dies, which will cut out a little slit at the top of the bottom of the arms so that you can slide something in there. So the set we're using today has the little bear and the little elephant and a cupcake and a heart. It also has a coordinating sentiment, and the other set that I will be using in some future videos has a mermaid and a little puppy, and it has a seashell and a treasure box and also a coordinating sentiment. And I'll talk about these a little bit more as we go along. So let's get started by die cutting a few panels for the front of our card. I'm using the Hexagon double stitch dies from Art Impressions. I'm going to grab that largest one and we'll die cut that from some black 100-pound cardstock. And then I've grabbed that fourth largest one and we'll die cut some Strathmore Bristol Smooth 100-pound cardstock. We're going to need 2 of those white panels. Now later on, I did decide to go a little bit smaller with these 2 panels, but I'll talk about that as we go along. So for now, I've got these 2 and that black panel. Let's go ahead and run that through the die cutting machine. And the next thing we'll do is create our card base. So let's set those aside. I've got another piece of 100-pound black cardstock. This measures 5 inches by 10 inches, and I'm scoring it at the 5-inch mark. And I basically just want this to be large enough to fit that largest die. So what I'm going to do to create the card base, we need the card to be able to open and close at the top. So I'm going to slide that die up over the top of that fold line. So you can see that there. I've slid that die up over the top of the fold line, and then I'm going to tape this in place. I want to make sure it's nice and straight. I am going to move that Post-it tape off to the side just a little bit, just so that it's not sitting on the card base, because I'll be running this through the die cutting machine several times and I don't want to have to peel away that tape. So now you can see that die is just above the fold line, and we're going to go ahead and run that through the die cutting machine several times, just to make sure that we're cutting through both layers of that 100-pound cardstock. So once that's done, we'll remove that excess. And now we've created this really cute shaped card base. And you can do this for any of your shaped dies. So have some fun with that. And you can see now that that panel that we cut is going to fit right on the front of this card. And it will finish off that stitch look that we have. So now we'll have stitching on all sides of the hexagon. And we're going to glue this right over top of the card base. So we're lining it up down towards the bottom of this card, and that will leave that little bit of a flap up over the top, but our card will still easily open and close. And you can see that there. Now I've got these panels, and I want to do a little bit of stenciling. So from Vicki Boutin, I've got the texture paste kit, and it comes with all these beautiful bright neon colors. We're going to be using that really pretty yellow, and that set also includes a little spatula as well. Now I also want to grab this really pretty honeycomb stencil from Fawn, and I'm going to be placing this right over top of this cardstock. Now here's where I realized I thought this panel was a little too big. I wanted that honeycomb to fit easily over this hexagon, so I went one size smaller. So I took that 5th largest die and I die cut 2 of those instead. I'll just set those other 2 aside for another project. So now that I've got the size a little bit smaller, it fits that honeycomb pattern perfectly. So let's go ahead and use the Wendy Vicki Make Art Station. This is a magnetic station. I've placed just a little bit of tape on the back of this hexagon, and then we'll use the magnets to hold that stencil in place. Now let's go to this beautiful neon yellow texture paste, and I'm using one of the Nuvo spatulas to apply this. It's a really flexible spatula. It's a little wider on the end, so it's going to allow me to easily apply this in a nice even fashion. So I am going to just kind of keep working that till I get a nice coating of that texture paste. And I just love doing this. I love applying texture paste. I just love how it looks when you're done. It just elevates your project to another level, I think. We're going to add some ink to this a little bit later on as well. So we'll darken this up just a bit. I'm just cleaning off the lid on that jar before I close it up. Let's go ahead and take a look at this. Now, because I did add a little tape to the back of that panel, I'm going to grab my Tim Holtz pick tool and just lift that up. And I'll just carefully lift that up. And then we'll set this aside to dry. Now, you could certainly use your heat tool if you prefer, but I am going to let this air dry. We've got plenty of other things we have to do for this card, so this will have plenty of time. We'll just set it aside and let that air dry. You do want to make sure you clean off your tools really well, so take everything to the sink and rinse that off. Now I'm going back to these same hexagon dies, and now I'm going to grab that third largest die. And that will be for an additional panel on the card. Again, I wasn't exactly sure how this card was going to come together, so I decided to add this layer, and that will sit right behind that honeycomb stenciling that we've done. So while that's drying, let's go ahead and do some stamping. I've got the brand new Art Impressions So Sweet Armful set. This is just adorable. The little elephant, and there's a little bear. And you get the little items that you can put in his arms or her arms. Get a cupcake and a heart. And then there's also a little sentiment there as well that says, "You're so sweet." And you get the coordinating dies. And we're also going to stamp some bees. And these are from the Birds and Bugs set from Art Impression. And these are fun because you get 3 different ones and they're all moving in different directions. So I really like that. And this comes with the coordinating dies as well. So I've placed some Strathmore Bristol Smooth cardstock in my mini MISTI stamp positioner. I've got some VersaFine Onyx black ink. Let's go ahead and stamp these. And I'm pressing that out with my stamp tool. And then off camera, I stamped a few more of those bees. Now with Pink Haze, Warm Gray number 6, and Light Gray, I'm going to color in my little bear. And I'm using the Zig Clean Color Real Brush pens to do my coloring. These are a water-based marker, and then I'll use the Zig Blender pen to do my blending. So you can see that I applied both of the grays at the same time, and then I'll just blend them all together. You could certainly add the light gray first, blend that out a little bit, and then add your darker gray, but I find it just as easy sometimes to do both at the same time. I've already applied a little bit of pink to the cheeks and a little bit in the ear. So again, I'm just going to create a few little shadows here and there. And do keep in mind that all of the products I'm using today are listed and linked down below and also on my blog. Just adding a little shadow underneath the nose and then pulling that up towards the top. You can always come in with a little bit more pink and blend that out a second or third time. Then let's go ahead and do the arms. Now here's where I thought it was a little bit light. I thought I needed a little bit more shadowing off to the side of the face. And then I'll just kind of blend that in towards the center, keeping the center of the face fairly light. Now what's really fun with these armfuls is you'll see when we go to die cut this little guy, it's going to cut a slit above the arms and below the arms. And that is going to give us the opportunity to slide something in there. Now this stamp set does come with the cupcake or the heart, so you can slide either one of those in there. But we are going to be adding a little pot of honey. And I'll talk about that a little bit more as we go along. But we're going to slide a little pot of honey in there. And you could certainly slide anything in there you like. So take a look through your stamps and see what you have. Any of your smaller images would be perfect here. You could slide a sentiment in under the arms. You could have a little bouquet of flowers. or he could be holding a balloon. You could put a little umbrella there. So kind of look through some of your stamps. This is a great way to use some of those images that you already have, and you can just tuck those in. But again, it does come with the cute little cupcake and this cute little heart. So let's add a few more shadows to this, and then we'll go ahead and color in the little overalls. And for the overalls, I'm going to switch to the blue-gray. And I'll just use this same color to add some extra shadowing. So you don't always have to have more than one color. In this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply that color around the edges, and I'll just pull in towards the center. And then what I can do is come in with another layer of that same color. So if you don't have a color that coordinates really well for doing your shading or your shadowing, just use that same color and just add another layer or two. You can see here I'm adding another layer, and then I'll just blend that out again. And I can do that as many times as I need to. What's nice about using the blender pen is your paper doesn't get very wet. Whereas if you were using a water brush here, which you certainly could if you wanted to, your paper will get a little bit wet. So with the blender, you don't have to worry about that as much. Now I switched over to yellow and light brown, and I'm going to color in the little bee. I started with the yellow, added a little light brown down towards the bottom, and then I'm blending that out. And for the wings, I'm using the haze blue just to give them a little bit of a pretty shadow. So once that was all set, I colored the rest of those in off camera. I'm going to grab the coordinating dies, and there's where it's going to cut that slit above the arm and below the arm. So you do want to make sure you take a little bit of time to line these up really well. And then I'm using that Post-it tape again to hold this in place. And I do have those coordinating dies for the little bees, which makes this really nice that you don't have to cut out these little tiny bees. And I'll run those through the Sizzix Sidekick machine. And there you can see that little slit, the top and the bottom. And then I'll go ahead and run the rest of those bees through the die cutting machine off camera. I wasn't quite sure how many I needed at this point, and later on you'll see that I did need to die cut one more of the bees. So off camera, I also stamped from the watercolor small container set from Art Impressions this little pot. It's a little pot for flowers, but I thought it would make a cute little honey pot. And I colored it in using the Mustard Zig Clean Color Real Brush Pen. And I just added a couple layers of that mustard and blended that out. And then I used my detail scissors and cut that out. I've got some Distress Oxide ink in the Wild Honey. I've got a small blending brush, and I'm going to add this color around the edges of all of these little hexagons. And I can go right over top of the texture paste. I'm just going to just blend it out nicely. That's going to give us a little shadow around the edges of all of these panels. So that one is for the front of the card, and then this one is going to be for our sentiment on the inside of the card. So I just want to make that a little bit more interesting by bringing in some of this ink around the edges of this, and then we'll also stamp our sentiment on that panel. And then this larger one is the one I decided to add behind that panel with the texture paste on it. So now let's go ahead and stamp our sentiment, and I'm going back to the same Armful set. And that says, "You're so sweet," and I'm going to center that. Again, I'm going back to that VersaFine Onyx Black ink. Let's go ahead and stamp this. And then I've got my Pitt Artist Pen. This is from Faber-Castell. And that little honey pot is going to get tucked in his arms. But I thought I would write the word honey on it. I'm just taping that down to my table because it was so tiny. I was having a hard time trying to write on it. So I'm just writing in that word honey. And again, this is a small detailed pen. It's a permanent marker. and it's the 0.1 millimeter, so it allows me to write in a little tiny print. You can see that up close, and that'll get tucked right in his arms. I did add a few more little details to that pot, but I really didn't need to because we're going to be adding some honey in this pot, and that is going to get hidden. So you can add as many details as you want with your little pen. You could even use a gel pen as well. So let's go ahead and add the sentiment to the inside of the card. I've got some Nuvo Deluxe adhesive. We'll just center this and glue this down. And then for a little bit more interest on the inside, I'm going to add one of those little bees. And I'll just glue everything flat for the inside of the card, just so it doesn't get too bulky. So we can pop that in place. So I'm going to glue the one with the texture paste onto this larger white hexagon. And I'm just going to center that. You could certainly pop this up if you wanted to. But I'm going to be popping up these two pieces. I've got some 3D foam tape, and I'm going to apply that around the back, and then that'll give this a little bit more dimension. And then I've got my Cricut weeding tool to remove that backing. You just want to rub the backing down with the flat end of the tool, and then use that little pokey end just to lift up that backing. It makes it really easy to do. Let's go ahead and center this. And now with our little Armfuls guy, we're going to add some 3D foam tape to the back of this as well. That'll also hold that little honey pot in place. I'm going to add plenty of this. So I'm just cutting some little chunks of it. And then again, we'll remove that backing. And so we'll have plenty of dimension on this card. Let's go ahead and tape that down. And then we can add all of our little bees. Now I am going to be popping these up just for, again, a little bit more dimension. And once I had the bees positioned, I realized that I needed one more. So you'll see here that off camera, I stamped and die cut one more bee and just added it to the front of the card. And I have an odd number of bees on here. That's the best way to go. Usually is 3, 5, 7, 9. So adding in odd numbers is a little bit more pleasing to the eye. So that's another reason why I went back and die cut another one of those bees. You could certainly just put 3 on here, but I got a little carried away and I just wanted all of these bees buzzing around the honeycomb. So I'm using those scrapbook.com small 3D foam squares to do this. And there's that extra bee. Now with some Wink of Stella clear glitter pen, I'm adding some sparkle to the wings of all of the little bees. And then I decided for his overalls, I wanted to add either a plaid or some polka dots or some stripes. I did decide to go with the polka dots because I do love adding polka dots. And I'm using my white gel pen to do that. And that just made everything pop out a little bit better. I'm adding a little dot to each of the eyes and the tip of the nose as well, just to brighten things up. And then we'll add a few highlights here and there. Now I've got the scrapbook.com Pops of Color, and this one is called Sunshine. I'm actually going to squeeze a little bit onto my glass medium mat, and with just a little wooden craft pick, I'm going to just apply this right along the top of that jar. And it really does look like honey. It's very glossy and shiny, so it gives you that really pretty shine that honey would have. And I'm just kind of dabbing it on. You could certainly squeeze it on, but I just felt I had more control this way. So I'm just picking some up and just tapping it right on the top of that jar. And I thought that just added a lot to this little card. So let's take a closer look at the card. Off camera, I added some black and white baker's twine, again, just to tie everything together and just for a little bit more interest. And don't forget to subscribe. I've got some new videos coming out with these armfuls. I've got one with the mermaid, another one with the little bear, and then we'll be doing an edge-to-edge shaker card with the little elephant. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please hit the like button and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so that you don't miss a single video. Thanks so much for joining me today. I hope you all have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.